Hello, welcome to Citizens for Global Solutions Minnesota. I'm Katia. Citizens for Global Solutions Minnesota is a nonprofit organization based in the state of Minnesota in the United States. Every third Thursday of every month, we host one of our online projects. Today is time for our Human Rights Forum, and our guest speaker will discuss the forced displacement around the globe and the short and long-term response efforts of Alight. The event is free and open to anyone. If you want to learn more about Citizens for Global Solutions Minnesota work, please visit our website, www.globalsolutionsmn.org, and follow us on Twitter and Facebook pages. Our guest speaker, Angela Eifert, has worked in the financial services industry for over 10 years, but found her true north of mission-driven work serving international communities. After finding her place at Alight, formerly American Refugee Committee, Angela has been building relationships with Alight's donor communities for over 10 years to raise critical funds for the organization's short and long-term response efforts for the displaced across the globe. Angela has a Bachelor of Arts in Communications from the University of Minnesota and a master's degree in international business. She has worked for Alight for almost 12 years. Without a global response to the climate crisis, it is expected that 1.2 billion people could be displaced by the year 2050. Angela Eifert will share Alight's response efforts to the climate crisis in the Horn of Africa. Angela, welcome. The floor is all yours. All yours.
Great. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, and just checking, we can see my screen.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katia, for the opportunity to speak with you today and share our work here. We are based in Minneapolis, and we've been based here for 40 years, actually. And I'm happy to meet all of you tonight and share more about our work. I'm going to start with introducing myself again. Thank you for that great introduction, Katia. Just a little bit more again about me and a backdrop to Alight, and then I'll move into the presentation. As the Director of Global Connections at Alight, I do lead our fundraising team for private sector, mostly in the individual philanthropy space. And so my role as a global connector is to connect individuals who are looking to support displaced communities globally into the work that we do. And so we can do that through co-creative innovative programming or just through direct impact into our programs that we have existing today. So I'll give a little bit more about that as we go through. And Alight is an international humanitarian organization that responds to human displacement. And today I'm going to focus on that response effort for climate migration. Okay, so we began our journey in 1979 with an enduring belief in the power of the possible and the abundance of everyday people. We are a borderless team of 2,500 people globally. We work in 20 countries, and we work alongside 4 million people who are experiencing displacement. We walk alongside those who by sheer circumstance find themselves on the displacement journey, a long and arduous journey that it is, that upended their lives, their hopes, and their dreams. Whether that journey is 6 months or a decade, we are on their journey for the entire time, from the start to the time that their journey ends. And that is when they feel settled, secure, and on a pathway to thriving. Everything we do starts with co-creation. We've been integrating human-centered design into our work for more than a decade. And in doing so, this has allowed our 2,500 humanitarians around the world to understand the experiences of the displaced better than anyone, and to be able to deliver services worthy of their humanity. At Alight, we do not refer to the people we serve as beneficiaries. Rather, they are customers, and we work for them. We believe that their lived experience renders them subject matter experts, and changing the relationship with the people we serve from a hand out to a hand up is central to the work that we do. Co-creation brings together a diverse set of voices, including local communities, to design new ways of doing things, design new things and new ways of doing things, or to improve on existing things. We seek local partnership at every step so that our work always aligns with our values. And not only does this align our values, but it also aligns our communities to better adopt the practice or the service that they've created. There's no better way to onboard a service or a product that we are designing as a solution than one that they've created and is their own. And it also allows us to onboard a product or service elsewhere in the world that we may not have thought about, but is also a really good fit. We believe in finding and uplifting the work of others and on shifting the power dynamics that have permeated the space for many decades. And this sets up our work. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, yeah, there was. This sets up our work to be more impactful, meaningful, and sustainable for the places and communities we serve. And it pushes us beyond just the basic needs. And it brings us to design programs and services that are longer term in nature, and to design for needs that are essential to all human beings. Since 2019, we've been on a journey of becoming the 21st century humanitarian organization we believe in. It began with a core and fundamental characteristic that resides in the hearts and minds of all of our community. And that is, every human being is full, whole, complex, and worthy of being truly seen. And so I'm going to transition into the work that we do with climate displacement. In 2021, there were 40.5 million newly internally displaced people, or IDPs, majority of them having fled climate disasters and environmental catastrophes in the world. Despite poor communities' low contribution to the global greenhouse emissions, they are the ones withstanding the greatest impact of climate-induced suffering. And as was said in the introduction, in the absence of a strong global response to the climate crisis, it is estimated that 1.2 billion people could be displaced by the year 2050. These impacts include increased risks to specific groups of people. Gender-based violence effects on women and girls is much greater. Gender-based violence due to longer treks for water, their weakened immune systems due to stress and less access to food and water impact them more. And this lack of care and treatment for sexual reproductive health also creates greater impact to perinatal outcomes due to spread of disease and extreme weather events, and also environmental toxins that impact unborn children. Women and girls account for 60% of the 690 million who are food insecure in the world. The time collecting water and firewood makes their ability to feed their families much more difficult. It increases their need for hygiene, and health treatment is a multiplier for women and girls, is a threat multiplier. And when supply is short, there is a pyramid of needs, and women and girls will be the last to receive food and water when food is scarce. This leads to illness, greater risk to health for babies, moms, and children, and pregnancies. Traditional food hierarchies put girls eating last. We know that climate displacement requires both short-term and long-term solutions. In the short term, there is need for immediate disaster relief for internally displaced people, or IDPs. In the short term, we need to think about adaptation, sustainability, and resilience. We are currently working with the following displaced communities at Alight. This includes Afghans, Burmese, Congolese, Ethiopians, Somalis, South Sudanese, Syrians, Ukrainians, and Central Americans. Somalia and other countries in the Horn of Africa have been recovering from the last year of the worst drought in 40 years. And this was 80% of the region's population is dependent on farming and herding to survive, put them at great risk, and dwindled harvests forced them to migrate and become displaced in search of more resources, water, and food, and jobs. 40 million people across the Horn of Africa were food insecure, including 10 million children who were acutely malnourished. And the lack of access to sufficient and safe, nutritious food forced people to leave their homes. Alight provided healthcare, wash services, nutritional support, and increased food and water security in partnership with local communities, USAID, and other affiliates. With support of USAID, Alight supplied clean drinking water to over 10,000 drought-affected people in the Hudun district of Seoul. Just to give you a few of the immediate and the long-term solutions that we did over the last year. This devastating drought pushed millions to flee, but this time they aren't going back. They are deciding to start their lives over where they landed, which is unlike the past, where there has been cyclical weather disasters that have forced them to leave before. They have always returned and picked up their herding businesses and lives where they left off. But this time they are deciding to stay where they have landed because they are tired of the cyclical nature of the climate disasters, the devastating droughts that force them to leave every 3 to 5 years. So what we are working on for the future is a partnership, and we're working on many partnerships, but one that I'm going to talk about here to give you an example of the future vision is we're working in partnership with the local governments of these communities where many of the internally displaced have landed. And this particular vision is in the Hargeisa, Somaliland region, and we are envisioning a multi-dimensional long-term solution, kind of urban design, if you will, that offers not only the basic needs of food and water access, but we're doing that through livelihoods. So turning water solutions into businesses and allowing those to be the way forward for newly settled, new arrivals in these communities to be able to contribute to the community, but also have those jobs and long-term resources available to them to start their lives over. And so this particular map here is just showing the Global Water First solution is a partner that we are exploring, which is a pay-for model water solution. And it is been and it has been vetted to be a water system that can work inside of the region of the Horn of Africa, where groundwater can be hard to reach and can be highly salinated, which is a difficult system. But this water partnership looks very promising, and it offers for every water system can offer 10 jobs in the community. And so we're excited about systems like this, and we're doing that with several other areas of basic needs where we can, again, align these basic needs with job opportunities and really support individuals to start their long-term future in these areas. We're also doing shelter design and working with the government on restoration of the earth, the soil, through tree planting. So we have millions of trees scheduled to go in over the next 2 to 3 years, all in hopes of improving the ground soil to prevent devastating droughts in the future. And so just to focus on the 3 areas that we are doing long-term sustainable programming around include on-site water treatment systems, core hold rehabilitation and maintenance of existing water wells, and fast-growing tree plantations, which are including trees like the Polonia, which are they don't require a lot of water after the first year, and they are the fastest growing, and so can have full-grown trees within 3 years that offer a range of other opportunities, which include shade, firewood, wood for all kinds of making of other products, and so on. So there's a lot of job opportunities built into that model as well. So these are just, again, midterm, long-term vision that I'm sharing with you for how we're thinking about the response in the long term following the most short-term emergency response from the last year. Partnership opportunities that we are seeking still include, always that emergency climate response. We always, Alight will be always that partner that is on the ground within 48 hours to respond to the human need in the case of a climate crisis. And so we always are seeking those partners who are along for that journey, because it is critical to have the short-term response needs readily available. And then for the reimagining the climate future, the future post-emergency, what is the midterm and long-term solutions that we are going to build on to help these displaced communities to rebuild meaningful lives? And so, as I had said earlier, Alight is along for the entire journey, from the moment they're displaced all the way to the moment that they are able to thrive once again. So I've added here just a really basic slide for some of the interesting facts or just notes. But climate migration is mostly internal, and it's moving from rural to urban patterns in search of jobs and access to resources. And so when you think about climate migration globally, it is in this pattern that we're seeing the trend. And refugee protections at international level does not recognize climate migration as a protected class of people. And so this makes it very challenging for response efforts, funding, systemic, the more traditional systemic approaches to supporting displaced communities that we see for race, creed, and gender. Which are considered protected under the refugee law, but it is not the case for climate migration. And so I also added here that policy change at that international level is very difficult. And it is most likely that labor migration will be the way forward in how we respond or how we show up to provide resources that can support climate displaced individuals. And so that is just a quick snapshot of some things that might interest you further for conversation. And I just wanted to add here, if everyone helps to hold up the sky, then one person does not become tired. That concludes the talk today, but I'm open to questions or any conversation you'd want to have.
Thank you, Angela. So wonderful to hear everything that you and Alight are doing for the entire world. This is wonderful. We do have a first question in the chat from Jim. How successful is Alight in coordinating refugee support with other civil society organizations? For example, helping Ukrainians in Poland or other countries, including in the United States?
So if I have my pull up the question, so it's collaboration with other organizations. We actually focus almost, I don't want to say it is actually a large percentage of our response, especially in Ukraine. We have activated, I'm not sure the exact number, but we've activated a lot of local organizations to deliver the services. The volunteer organizations have all been accessed locally in Poland and in the areas that we're supporting displaced people from Ukraine. So highly successful, I will say. We focus very much on local organization activation to deliver critical services and products. We source locally and regionally through these channels, and also labor. We hired a lot of guides to provide the protection services and the guiding support that we did in Ukraine, for example, for housing. We were in partnership with Airbnb, and we hired guides who many of them were refugees that became then protection trusted guides to support families to find the housing that would allow them short-term landing on their journey to understanding their next moves, both midterm and long-term. So, and also similarly in Africa, with climate migration, same thing. We're working with a lot of local water agencies, government agencies, and the local government and businesses to deliver the resources for the new arrivals in each community.
Okay. We have another question from Vincent Di Stefano.
First and foremost, thank you for an excellent presentation. That was terrific. Now, you mentioned just a moment ago that you partnered with Airbnb. And that leads me to my question. Airbnb, in terms of displacing people, is sometimes a vast part of the problem rather than a part of the solution, because it makes housing precarious if we're renting our houses out for vacations and not for the homeless that don't have them. And certainly working with partners is important. My question is, how do you vet the people you partner with, since you say, exclusively working with the local organizations? How do you avoid the endemic corruption that can happen many times at the local level? Although you said that working locally is vastly superior to just parachuting in and doing things on your own. So how would you vet the organizations you partner with to ensure that the funds and the efforts that you're putting go to the people that need them most?
Excellent question. Hope I can answer it effectively. We have many measures of security enforcement, especially when it comes to finances. As an international US-based nonprofit, there are a lot of checks and balances that we have to go through that include many checks for terrorism. That we have like a background checks that we have to do with every individual that we have on the roster for if money will be exchanged. We have to do those background checks every time. We also, to make sure they're not on that list, first and foremost, and then it moves from there into local assessments of trusted networking, advisory level. We are completely at risk if anything should happen. So we take that responsibility very seriously. And so it is a process of vetting, not just from the international databases of corruption and terrorism, but it is also at the local level of assessing through local authorities, any list that they have made available through who knows who, and following our intuitions of expertise in these spaces and having worked in international context for 45 years. But yeah, and there's also financial risk as well as, of course, the human side of that. And so we have protection teams and advisory teams that are trained to be looking for certain red flags, also on the human side. So we are, especially in the case of Ukraine, I'll say it was, it's always the case, but, in emergency situations, we have a lot of people coming over at one time. Our trained professionals in the protection space. We're looking at those transport environments where a lot of things can happen without anyone noticing. Those are the areas that we really focus on, and following our thread of intuition and knowing what the red flags are. So it's just a matter of, doing all of the checks in the most practical ways to the most expert ways. So I hope that answers, but to answer also about Airbnb, it was, Ukraine was a unique, so many people. It was something like 5 million people in like a month. It was a huge number of people at one time. And a lot of donors from Airbnb.org community had put up their properties across Europe. But those properties were not known or couldn't be found by anyone. There was no system that could match people. So luckily we were able to build that partnership pretty quickly and start to be the guide that could find the most vulnerable, looking for those places to sleep and to go, and guide them onto safe transportation to locations that they would not have otherwise known to find, and they would have been looking for, and may have ran into trouble of misinformation, or worse, right? So those were the moments that we were very critical in those exchanges of finding people who needed housing and transportation, and intersecting with our local guides, our protection teams on guard. So that was it's still actually going on. Our partnership is still in process. So it's been a really successful partnership in finding placement and allowing people two weeks to a month time in a safe home that was donated.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So you said there are about 2,500 and more employees or people working within Alight all over the globe. I imagine this number fluctuates a little bit here and there, but where are there more people working in any given project right now?
Where do we have the most people working? That's a really good question. It does fluctuate. We have some long-standing programs that have definitely fluctuated over the years. Uganda being a much bigger footprint for us. We've been working there for over 20 years, actually 30 years, also in Rwanda. But because resettlement numbers have changed, and also influx of refugees have changed. So we just, by sheer nature of size of programming and it displaced individual communities in certain countries have more staff, but I probably don't have the best. My gut is telling me it's in East Africa that we have the most staff, So right now, also Sudan, we were in response to Sudan crisis, and many of our teams have been displaced now. But it's, we had a pretty large team of 1,000 people that were working on the ground inside Khartoum at one point, but I don't know right now how many that is, because I'm not in the center of that, that update. But I would welcome follow-up if that's something you'd be interested in. I'd be happy to share with you actually the more concrete numbers of our footprint in East Africa versus Ukraine, for example, if that's something you'd like a follow-up on. And I'd be happy to send an email with that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we have our largest programming is in East Africa, just as a general. We have like I said, long stronghold programming in Rwanda. We've been a primary partner to the government in Rwanda since the genocide 30 years ago, as well as in Uganda, where there's 1.5 million refugees from 13 countries in Uganda. We've been a strong partner, both for water and protection, and different community service activation support systems in Uganda. So our teams have fluctuated and evolved across 10 different locations in Uganda. So it's a pretty big area, landmass that we cover as well. But yeah, and South Sudan is a large space for us as well. And also Somalia, there's maybe upwards of 1,000 people working in Somalia as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We do have another question from Mohammed, who is our guest from Ethiopia. Mohammed, do you want to ask your question yourself?
Yeah, I'll be happy. Thank you so much for the presentations and for your contribution to the world. I'm also happy to hear that you are doing your best to help people in East Africa, especially. I came from Ethiopia, as Professor Katia has mentioned, and I will be happy if I hear from you what really you are doing, over the last few years, especially. There's a lot of crisis going on. There is a climate change, there is population is growing, and the civil war, nearly the civil war which is going on in Ethiopia. People are, going, there is human trafficking, people going to the Middle East, to different countries, not even to the Middle East only. So really, in what you are doing, really, are you addressing what the root cause of all this crisis, and how, because it affects your efforts unless you address the root problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be happy if I know what really you are doing in that respect.
Yeah, we don't really address the political negotiation side. Any of the kind of root causes of many of our displacement is political, especially in East Africa. There is, we work in post-war context. So it's, for example, in Uganda, we have an influx of displaced persons coming through currently from DRC, and it's just been it's ongoing. Year after year, there's bouts of conflict that send thousands of people over the Uganda border. And so the news isn't talking about, those kinds of displacements most often, but we don't really have any intersection into the source of that. We know that these are rebel fighting groups. It's not, we're humanitarian. We respond to the human need, and it doesn't actually matter who you are, or if you are a refugee in search of resources, we respond to the human crisis. So our point of the journey really starts with the need of humans seeking refuge. And so that source conflict is not something that we're engaged with in any way, or on the front lines of, in terms of negotiating any outcomes there. We do establish relationships with governments for the purposes of humanitarian response, and we provide, we must be actually very neutral in most cases, like we just have to be in order to provide resources inside these countries that will most likely host refugees for not just a short term. The reality is that refugees are often displaced for, on average, up to 20 years. So this is a long relationship that we build in neutrality in order to respond to the human needs, and that is our mandate. And so we don't do anything we can't do anything to risk our reputation in these ways. And so, advocacy is not something that we are doing at Alight directly in these cases. Hope that answers your question. Yeah, I know there's lots of agencies that do, but we're strictly on the humanitarian response side.
Wonderful.
Actually, I'm not much interested. I know there are always limitations to what we do, and I don't mean that you engage in resolving the conflicts. I know that part may not be much of your focus, but some of the issues are interrelated. Whenever you just do something to address some problem, there is still there is a root cause for that problem.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, of course, there are gross human rights violation issues, especially with this migration. I mean, even the word, is my opinion, actually, is kept silent in some of the gross human rights violations which is going on in Yemen. A lot of people are going, in the Mediterranean and in Red Sea areas, so where in borderlines in Saudi Arabia, even recently, if you have some news, people are being, fired by security men. I mean, I'm not accusing anybody, but if you're really working on these issues, if you have some idea, that's just to make my opinions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, understand. Yeah, I will just, on a solutions level, I'll just say, we are very much drilling into the source issues, that prevent long-term sustainable practices, let's say for jobs or food insecurity, right? These are things on a solutions level that we are drilling into, like source. How can we improve those situations to improve outcomes for the humans that are in need of these services and resources? So there is, affecting change at the source level through problem solving is definitely something that we're doing, and we focus very much on human-centered design, local leadership to really understand those issues the best and get to the source of what is it that can be done to really elevate and improve outcomes, so the resources are more readily available, accessible to all. So that is definitely our primary hope and desire in our initiatives that we take. So yeah, it's a very, as you are stating, human rights issues are extremely complex, and there's a lot of partners in that space. And our teams on the ground are, inside those sector trainings, and they're from these communities. 96% of our staff are actually hired from the communities we work in. So they understand what these barriers are and are navigating cautiously and carefully, and with the best interests in mind of the people. So yeah, thank you for sharing, Mohammed.
Thank you. We do have another question from the audience. It's from Marian. She understands that Alight has no political involvement, but still she wants to know if you at Alight address much or any human trafficking.
Yeah, on our protection service, we have a very large sector of work, which is protection, which is includes gender-based violence, even domestic violence, psychosocial counseling, and other care treatments to support people who've been through trauma. So trafficking is one of those things that, well, it's not like a big area of that we're saying that we do. It's not like we're experts in that space, but we are trained for the protection of individuals who may be victim to that, right? And we understand the signs of somebody who is in that situation, right? So we're on guard, we're on watch for all of those situations, and we're getting in between, just to support those individuals on their journey of displacement, making sure they are as safe as they can be, and really paying attention to the red flags that are happening for their care and their safety. And so if we suspect that there is trafficking situation, we are skilled and trained to respond to that. And we also do activate local authorities for domestic violence, other things that are in response to stopping the threat, right? So we do remove people from unsafe areas, situations. These things we do have protocols for all of the protection work that we do. So this does include trafficking, but I would say it's not, we don't have a strong, it's not our focus, so to speak, in terms of looking for trafficked individuals, but we are on watch for it, and it is part of our work in the protection arena. I hope that makes sense. Yep.
Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have other questions from the audience? Yes, Vincent.
Yeah, I do. I was just looking at your website. I'm very interested about it. Took me a while to find it, but I noticed you're working in quite a few countries, and some of these countries are either involved in internal struggles, warfare, and whatnot. But one that struck me that is very problematic is Myanmar. And I was just curious how you're capable of working in such a repressive government without co-opting your values and obviously assisting the individuals that need your help so desperately, because Myanmar and Sri Lanka and the countries in that area are incredibly affected by climate change.
Yeah. Myanmar is a really complex environment, and our teams have worked in very it's hard. It's really every day what they navigate to get to the people who need the care is quite heroic, if I might say. Like, it's just daily boats to the most vulnerable to reach them, as there's so many that are hard to reach in that region, in that country. So our teams are, as I've mentioned, mostly they're local, right? So they know how to navigate. They know the culture, they know the languages, they know the specific protocols of what to do, what not to do. They know how to navigate difficult situations, which are ever present in Myanmar. And we are, our focus is healthcare and protection work. So, reaching the most vulnerable to receive the healthcare that they need, so that we can first and foremost stop spread of disease, and make sure that people who are not seen can be seen for their health needs. And so we have people who are working inside these communities, deep into them, to know who needs care and what they need in a confidential manner, and so that people can receive that care without being under threat of, so it's all through this trust, network of professionals who are operating as heroes every day to meet people who are extremely vulnerable, and to ensure that they know that they are anonymous, but also their life is valued, and we are there to protect that. So yeah, we're Myanmar is very, and of course we have leadership at that level as well, working inside the sector meetings and building the reputation with the governments to ensure that we are a partner that they trust. So that neutrality, how we can say that we're stopping the spread of disease is better for all, better for the region. That is in everyone's best interest. So these are things that we are, ensuring that we can elevate and respond at that ground level to reach as many people as possible.
If I may, I'd like to take another track on this question here. I know that you have on your website, you say, not a one size fits all. You adapt to the environment you're in. And because you do that successfully, you do that with the local people. You don't parachute in and tell people how to do it. You allow them to tell you how to do it.
Right.
But you do work with partners. And so out of curiosity, I'm curious if there are any partner organizations you work with, and I'll pick one out of a hat because they were successful in eradicating guinea worm disease, which almost halted blindness from that disease. The Carter Foundation, irrespective of what you may think of Jimmy Carter, the Carter Foundation did wonderful work. And so I'm just curious, what other organizations have you partnered with that would be like that were successful and productive partners?
Yeah. Great question. I wish I knew all of our partners offhand in that region, but we have had partnerships with, many UN agencies. I mean, we partner most often with UN agencies who are spread vastly across these communities that are displaced as well. And so we work with, U.S. State Department agencies are also present in these communities, but are, they're localized leaders. But in terms of private agencies, we have had, global health. I think it's called Global Health Forum was one. It was like a coalition of health groups. We were in partnership for many years inside South Sudan for healthcare, for the healthcare work that we were doing. Unfortunately, that actually ended in the last, I want to say 2 or 3 years. And so we've been providing the work that we do has been more on the private side versus that pooled funds coalition. But there's probably many more that I am not naming because I don't work on the partnership side directly in these countries. But it is, one that I'd be happy to share with you. And also our annual report may also point some of them out. But as a follow-up, I have an email in mind that I'll share with you, which involves some of our private partnerships that come to mind in some examples. We have done some things with Rotary International as well. That's one particular area that I was involved in, so I can speak to that one. But it's a pathway we also, I will say, are trying to do more of. So we really value the private sector incredibly because of the, more typically flexible spending that comes with that. So the more flexible we can be with the funding, the more that we can navigate with that human-centered methodology and really allowing the locals to lead. And then also innovation can happen more readily with flexible dollars. So private sector is something that we are looking for more partnerships like that all the time. And we're doing a lot of more recently, more pushing toward activating more of them. So if you know of any that you think would be a great fit, we would love to talk to them actually. But I will be happy to share with you some that I'm aware of in our regions.
Yeah, Medicine Sin Fronteras is one of the best that's out there. And I would be very surprised if you guys weren't working with them.
I think we are working I think in the Middle East. I think that we have a partnership. At least we did. I know that we at one point did in Syria response, I want to say. But we definitely have a lot of over the years have had many different kinds of partnerships, and which ones are active in the moment. I'm not totally up to speed on all of those, but again, I'll any direct questions or interest in learning more about that, I'm happy to do the follow-up and get back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Angela, did you, or at least do you know, if there were any instances where a country didn't allow the Alight to get inside and work, or if you had problems to go there before you were authorized to?
Boy, I'm sure we have had some, but I mean, we work with so we have also, just I'll mention, we have affiliate organizations under Alight's family. We have Questscope, which is in the Middle East, and we have ORAM, that works with the most marginalized refugee communities, which are LGBTQI. And we have Kuja Kuja, which is an innovative rating system for refugees to rate the services publicly. Just I mentioned that because where it has been more difficult, especially when our name was American Refugee Committee, there have been much more, our name definitely was not a friendly name in a lot of the countries that we worked in. Amazingly, we were still able to work inside Somalia back in 2011 when, you know, it was unheard of that a Western agency would work inside there. But we always went by ARC. And so we minimized American when we could, and then we furthered that access with our local or our affiliate organizations like Questscope that responded to the Syrian crisis in partnership with us. So we activated, you know, an organization that was inside Syria, Jordan for over 30 years to navigate that response. And so Alight or ARC at the time was just more in the background. And so we have that, you know, those partnerships are lined up to allow us to access people, to provide that response effort in the way that is going to be most received. So well, I'm not aware of any that particularly like kicked us out, or I'm not privy to any. I don't know any offhand, actually, but it's like, you know, it's possible in 45 years we have had that happen. But I do know that we've had challenges for sure with our name, and we've navigated that with partnerships and strong reputation, you know, 45 years of strong reputation in this space. Yeah, I'll just stop there. Yeah. And I will just like add right now that we just announced today with Questscope, our partner in Middle East, that we are doing a Gaza relief. And so that literally just broke for us like hours ago. So I'm mentioning it because it is one of those, you know, our Questscope partnership that responded in Syria is also now activating an alliance of on the ground partners that have been trusted partners in our Middle East responses, are now going to be supporting the Gaza relief.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
We have a question from the audience. Are you still involved with Afghans and Syrians?
Yeah, so we still work inside, we still do work inside Syria and Jordan through Questscope. And so during the earthquake earlier this year in Syria, we were responding to the housing needs, the food needs. We were routing supplies in through a vast network of volunteers that have been trusted partners and collaborators with Questscope for, again, almost 30 years. So this is a very strong partnership for us. And they're affiliate of Alight. They're under our family of organizations. And so the other one is Afghans. We do work inside Pakistan. We don't work inside Afghanistan, but we do work inside Pakistan. And so there is, when refugees are coming into Pakistan, we are supporting the displaced inside with various healthcare, and education is a really big focus for us, doing private home-based education to allow all children access to education versus the more centralized schools. We've been very successful in our programming in Pakistan to engage children in school that they can rely on. And that's been a really big, proud program for us. But healthcare and education are a focus in Pakistan. But yes, our teams are following the needs as displaced come in from Afghanistan.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'll just mention, if you don't know, we also just started a US program because of the Afghan evacuee response in Minnesota. We now have a US-based program, which is not something we've had in the past. So this is now supporting new arrivals from Ukraine. And it started with the Afghan community and the Welcome Home initiative that we did to respond to the 1,500 Afghans that came into Minnesota. But now we're going national in partnership with Welcome.us and AmeriCorps. But we have, there's a few partners that have been involved with the U.S. government on this front. But Alight was brought in the mix to provide a more welcoming experience for new arrivals coming into the U.S. And it's a bit of a reinvention of the resettlement, if you will. But we are not doing resettlement directly, just to be clear. But we are doing more of that welcome, and we're doing it through community partners like you. Actually, people can sign up, and we are looking for partners to sign up as community private sponsored groups. So you and 3 neighbors, for example, could say yes and allow a individual or family from anywhere in the world now. It's been opened up. It was Ukraine, but now it's everywhere. Can say yes to a huge demand of people trying to come to the US. And so the system, while it was a lottery before, now requires a private sponsor to actually host them. So this is the way forward. And so we need lots of people, Americans, to stand up actually right now and say yes, because the demand is very big, and there's very few sponsor groups that have been organized at this point to say yes. So we're in that process right now of trying to build up a pipeline of Americans to now host and be the mentors, essentially, for new arrivals to have a more welcoming onboarding experience to building a new life here in the US. So on the Afghan side, we've been working very closely with the Afghans here for sure. So I would love to, again, point you in the direction of our team in Minnesota. If you're interested in learning how to be a sponsor, we would absolutely love that, and tell everybody about it because it's we're an organization helping to really educate, bring awareness to all the resources to help sponsor groups to be better mentors and guides for new arrivals and build those friendships. In the end, that's what it is. It's just helping people to build community so they can truly navigate a new life here.
And if anybody is that's here live or is watching the recording, and if they are interested in joining and being part of this big family, where should they go? Who should they contact?
For the US program side, I would just say come to me at this point. So our website is wearealight.org. So you can also see anything online about our US programs, our global programs, and there are information for each of those programs as well for information. But if you can reach out to me at Angela E at wearealight.org, that would be great. And I'm a connector, so I connect you to the right people. And happy to do so. And thank you for listening.
Wonderful. Well, we are getting to the end of our program, unfortunately. But on behalf of the CGS, I want to thank you all for attending this event. If you want to watch again, the recording of this discussion can be found on our website and on our YouTube channel. CGS Minnesota hosts events every month. Please check our website for updates. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at cgsmn.contact@gmail.com. On behalf of CGS Minnesota, thank you so very much, Angela, for your enlightening and heartfelt presentation. Please do keep in touch. I know you will. I hope that with our CGS Minnesota human rights educational programs, more people learn about human rights and help to make the world a better place. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Hope to see you again very soon. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you so much for having
Thank
me.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Katia. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you.
Thank you.